I'm really excited to introduce Samorn Selim today. She is here to discuss your personal brand, why it's important, and what you can do with it. Samorn Selim is the founder of Samorn Selim Coaching. As a coach, counselor, and lawyer, Samorn provides a holistic approach to coaching professionals, recent graduates, and students, including women, people of color, and first-generation professionals. She has worked with over 1,000 clients to assess their career goals, develop effective job search strategies, and manage their professional development. She is committed to and involved in diversity and inclusion initiatives and is a frequent featured speaker and moderator at professional associations on hot topics such as managing cultural code switching, supporting first-generation professionals, sponsoring women of color, and developing leadership skills. She has provided pro bono legal services, helping refugees, children, and elderly dependents, and pro bono career coaching services for first-generation professionals, women of color, and other diverse groups. So let's join in welcoming Samorn Selim to the stage.
Thank you, Nealeigh. Raise your hand if you wake up feeling every day, I can't wait to be my awesome self at work. Hear a lot of chuckles. Now raise your hand if you want to wake up feeling, I can't wait to be my awesome self at work. Awesome, I've got everybody on there. Welcome to Authentically You, taking charge of your personal brand. And before we dive into the program, I want to take a moment to thank a few people who made this happen. Nealeigh Mitchell, Kelsey Buncher, and Emily Swartz for making this happen. I know you guys are really busy, and the fact that you're taking this initiative to put this together means a lot. So if you guys can stand up, and if we can just give them a round of applause for their hard work. And I also want to thank Google for providing this. I think it's amazing that a company as great as Google, that's known to be one of the greatest employers, is still continuing to invest in its employees by providing the space and the resources to make this happen. So if we can just give Uncle Google a big round of applause too. And I also want to take this time to acknowledge each and every one of you for coming live and also connecting via live stream. I know all of you are incredibly busy. I was just hearing about your long commutes for some of you. And you could be out there taking pictures with the iBot or going to the gym. And the fact that you're here says a lot about you and your commitment to your career. So a big round of applause for you. And I want to take this opportunity to do something that I think we often don't do, especially for people who are high performers like yourselves. That's the reason why you're at a great organization like Google. So I want you to trust me with this. If you can raise your hands really wide, and while you're at it, try not to talk to the person on the right or the left. And just to give yourself a big hug and say, I'm so awesome. I couldn't hear you. Let's do it together again. One more time. 1, 2, 3. I'm so awesome. Yeah, and that's just a great reminder for yourself. Oh, I love seeing the smile. It's just that can give you so much energy. I think sometimes when we're in the busy of doing and getting things done, you forget to acknowledge how amazing you are and how far you've come. So if you just have this practice once a day, maybe first thing in the morning, that'll really help jumpstart your day. So when I started my career, I struggled very much in my career. I had this mentality that I have to put my head down and work really hard and be humble and not bother anybody because everybody's really busy. Who can relate to this? It's like everybody in the room. Everybody is really busy. And I was the first in my family to go to college and to go to professional school. So I didn't really have anybody I could talk to say like, hey, I'm running into this issue. How can I solve that? So I became known for being really reliable, really dependable. And that was great because I got a lot of good work. How many can relate to that? That the reward of good work is more work. It's like everybody in this room, they're like, yes, that happens. But on the flip side, what was not so great about having that reputation was that on Fridays at 9 p.m. when there was an urgent project, guess who got a call? Me. And I'm assuming a lot of you are also in that shoes as well, right? Where you're the ones who are known to be reliable, and so you're getting this call. And so what happens is it creates a really frustrating environment where you're feeling tired and overworked and underappreciated because people are so busy they forget to thank you or to really acknowledge you for your contributions. And at the same time, what I saw was that when it came time for raises and promotions, I wasn't necessarily getting the best raises or best promotions. And a big part of that was because I kept my head down, I didn't talk to anybody, and I didn't want to bother anybody. So nobody knew that I was doing anything, right? Other than that, I was getting things done when they needed it done. And so I found myself in a place where I was really frustrated and exhausted and just really wondering what I was going to do in my career. How many of you at some point of your career can relate to that? It's like almost everybody in here. And it wasn't until I worked with a leadership coach where she helped me to question my assumptions and my values and what it meant to be humble, what it meant to be authentic, and what it meant to be a hard worker, and then to devise some key strategies where I made some small changes in the way I interacted with people that had a huge impact, that I was able to see my life and my career transform. And I was so inspired by the work that she was able to do with me, and that inspired me to become a coach. And now I have the privilege of being able to help my clients go from being stuck or frustrated or waking up with dread or maybe feeling a little bored at work, to go from that space to being at a place where they're getting that dream job that they want, to go into that space where they wake up excited to go to work and they're getting the promotions and the raises that they so worked hard for and deserve, and most importantly, to be happy. And I'm really excited to be here to share those strategies with you. We have a short now 45 minutes together because I know we started a little late. So I'm going to give you my best stuff, but I also know that we won't be able to cover everything. I will try to reserve a little bit of time afterwards for questions, and we'll hang out afterwards if you have questions that you don't want to ask in the audience and want to ask privately. And if you have questions beyond that, feel free to always email me at samorn@samornselimcoaching.com. I do read every email that comes through. So what we're going to cover today is, what is your personal brand? Why does your personal brand matter? How does authenticity fit with your personal brand? And then with all that information, what do you want to do with that personal brand? Okay? So what is a personal brand? Anybody recognize who that is? Yeah? Yeah, somebody raised their hand. Awesome. Who is that person?
Oprah.
Oprah. Yes, everybody recognizes Oprah. So when you see Oprah, her picture, or hear her name, what are some words that you associate with her? Success. What else? Confident.
She's loved.
What was that?
She's loved by a lot of people. People like her.
Yeah, she's loved. Yes, she's loved. So what is the consistent theme that you're hearing in the words that are being described to Oprah? Would you say it's positive, negative, or neutral? Positive. Oprah has a very strong personal brand. And if you know her backstory, she started from very humble beginnings, right? But she had a strong vision about who she was and what she stands for. And now she's been able to build this amazing empire where in a moment's notice, she can put you on her book club list and go from an unknown author to being a New York Times bestseller overnight. Now, some of you might say, well, that's cool, but that's Oprah. What does that have to do with me? Similarly, in your own career, if you have a strong personal brand, you can really have the ability to make things happen and to help accelerate your career. Or if you have a negative association with your brand, guess what? That could also prevent you from being able to be promoted or being able to get to work on projects that you might want to have, or even being able to have good relationships with your coworkers. So that's the value of a brand. And I want to bring up an example of one of my recent clients. One of my recent clients that I worked with is an attorney who works at a tech company. How many attorneys are in the room? I got like one person in the back. Any engineers in the room? Oh, I've got like all engineers. I love it. It's going to be like the battle between engineers and lawyers. So a common story that I hear from my engineering clients is, I really hate talking to those lawyers. Who can relate to that? Like everybody, right? They're roadblockers, they don't understand the technology, and it's really a waste of time. So that's a common response I hear from my engineering clients. And then on the other hand, what I hear from my lawyer clients is, those engineers, they're really smart, they're so brilliant, they make amazing products, but they have no clue how they're screwing our company for millions and gazillions of dollars because they won't ever talk to us when they're doing these licensing deals, or they won't patent these projects, right? And so this is a common conversation that goes on between these two clients. So it's funny because I get to sit behind closed doors with them and I'm like, wow, this comes up almost every single instance. And so what happens is there's a cat and mouse game where issue comes up, lawyer calls engineer, engineer avoids lawyer, and that loop kind of goes on, creates a very very frustrating situation, and we have basically zero productivity, and in fact, what I argue is negative productivity, because who would be frustrated in that? How many of you would be frustrated with that? It's like, I see almost everybody's hands up. Yes, it's a frustrating situation. So what you end up with is energy where you're spending a lot of time being frustrated with each other, and not a lot gets done, and then something big might go wrong because you're not communicating and there's a communication breakdown. So this particular client went in knowing that this is something that typically happens. And so what we devised in terms of a strategy for him was, instead of approaching the engineers only when there was a problem with the legal issues, to actually go and get to know the engineers. So this lawyer went to a lot of the brainstorms. Sometimes he understood what was going on. Sometimes he was like, I don't know what this is. But he made friends when he was there. And what he would do is invite these engineers to go to coffees or to go to lunches. And through this process, what he was able to do is ask them about their lives, actually care about them as a human being. How about that, right? And then ask them, like, what are you working on? What's going on there? And point blank say, what can I as a lawyer and our legal team do to support you and to better communicate with you? Because we're really here to partner with you, and we really want to help you. And through that process and through consistent, and this is the key, consistent interactions in this way, he was able to develop a really strong relationship with them. And so instead, now when he calls the engineers, they actually pick up his phone call. And instead of being seen as a roadblocker, he's actually seen as a true partner. And what's also really interesting is that now when the engineers have problems, they actually call him and say, like, hey, we're running into this issue. Do you think you can give us a hand? And so through those positive associations with his personal brand, he was able to transform it from a negative association of being a negative roadblocker, right, to being somebody who's positive and a true partnership. And so he's able to, in his day-to-day life, decrease frustration and increase productivity and have more time to be able to revel in the successes that he has. And how does that benefit his career? His supervisors now know him as somebody who is a problem solver, who can connect with others. And so he becomes a go-to person when the legal team needs to work with the engineering team. And you can see that it's a win-win for everybody. So that's pretty amazing, right? The power of your personal brand. So what I love for us to do right now is to do an exercise. And in this exercise, often what people forget to think about is how our perceptions of what's going on actually impacts our interaction. So what I want you to do is to trust me, is to close your eyes. Make sure nobody pokes you from the side. And if somebody does, I'll go and hit their hand. And so to think of some colleagues that you have that you work with either in your group or outside of your group, and then to pick one person in mind. And if that person had to describe you using 3 adjectives, what are the 3 adjectives that's coming to mind? And I want you to sit with those adjectives for the next 5 to 10 seconds. It's a little uncomfortable, but I want you to feel what that feels like when you hear those adjectives about yourselves. Now I want you to open your eyes, and on your handout, write down what those 3 adjectives are in the section that's what is your personal brand. So what we're going to do now is partner activity. I want you to find a partner A and find a partner, hopefully somebody you don't talk to regularly, because the purpose of these types of conversations is really to meet somebody else as well, right? So find a partner. Go ahead, pair up. If you're on the right side, my right side, you will be partner A. If you're partner A, can you raise your hand? Okay. And then if you're on the left side, you'll be partner B. And if you're doing front and back, the person in front will be A and the person in back will be B. Okay. So if you're A's, can you raise your hand? Okay, so A's in this exercise, what we're gonna do is you're gonna get a chance to tell your partner what the 3 adjectives are and what feelings came up for you as you were thinking about these adjectives. And B, what you're gonna do is practice active listening. What that means is you don't get to talk, you don't get to ask questions, you actually don't even get to make noise. You can nod your head, but the idea is to really listen, and if there is an awkward silence, sit in that awkwardness, but allow A to really describe what's going on for them. Okay, so your 2 minutes starts now. go. I felt a lot of energy and positivity and saw a lot of smiles, so that's good. So now B, you did such an awesome job being a listener. Guess what? It's your turn to get to share. And A, likewise, please sit in silence and let the other person just express their feelings. And if there's awkwardness in the silence, it's okay. Just let them keep going, okay? So your 2 minutes, B, starts now. Wow. So it sounds like there was a lot of energy and enthusiasm and sharing. And what I love to hear is what came up for you? What were some of the adjectives? How did it feel to actually share what those adjectives made you feel? And what was it like to be on the listening side?
Then before, what other person thinks about me. So I could only come up with two.
Do you mind sharing what those two are?
First, I take initiative, and second, I'm helpful.
Okay, taking initiative and being very helpful. So very positive associations. And when you thought about that, about yourself, how did that make you feel?
All right.
All right. Okay, he's like, meh. That's actually a common experience that I get is a lot of people often don't take time to really think about the assumptions that they make about other people and how those people are perceiving them. And often the assumptions that we think that other people are making about us often are not as positive as what those other people might be thinking because we tend to be our worst critics. I'd love to hear a couple more shares.
That was interesting because I think I had a much more positive association as far as like what I try to describe myself versus my partner had a little bit more of a negative perception of himself. So I think that's also an interesting way of.
Okay, so you thought it was interesting that you had a more positive association of yourself and your partner had a more negative association.
Or was maybe he's more self-aware or critical?
Yeah,
I don't know.
more self-aware, more critical. What was it that you found interesting about it?
I don't know. I just thought it was.
Yeah. And here's why these associations are really important. It's that if you have a positive perception that somebody else thinks you're, a good person or easy to work with, when you see that person, are you more likely to engage with that person? Thumbs up, yes. Thumbs down, no. Mostly thumbs up, yes, yeah. Now on the flip side, if you're like your partner, where you might think like, oh, I don't think that person really likes me, or it's difficult to work with that person. When you see that person, are you going to want to engage with them? No. So this is the power of perception about your own personal brand. And this is often a critical piece that people don't think about is what are the assumptions that's underlying that is impacting our interactions with others? And I'll share a really good example of this is one of my clients. I worked with her, and she's really amazing. Across the board with her peers and her subordinates, she's seen as somebody who's really amazing, wonderful to work with. How many of you know amazing colleagues like that? It's like everybody. It's Google. Of course, you got to know at least one person like that. But the thing is that she was being passed up for promotions and raises all the time. We're like, that's odd. Like, why are you being passed up all the time? I don't get this. Like, you're really fantastic. And what we uncovered was that she never talked to her boss. And the only time she talked to her boss was when there was a crisis or something urgent. Does that sound familiar to everybody? Any hands? Yeah, a lot of like head nods, like, yeah. Okay, so now I want you to imagine if you were her boss and you saw her trotting down the hallway. Hey, boss, are you gonna wanna talk to her? No, because she's basically the crisis problem person, right? So you've just had this very negative association with her. And she also has this very negative association with her boss of like, he's always frustrated with me. So when she goes in, she's not her awesome, authentic self, right? Because her awesome, authentic self is somebody who's social, who gets along with people, who wants to be a helper. But when she goes to her boss because she has this association that he finds her annoying or she's disrupting him or bothering him, she just freezes up and the only thing she goes to him is like, hey, we have this problem, can we solve it? It's not making for a really good relationship. I see a lot of laughs out there. Like people are like, yeah, that happens. Yeah, and it's easy to imagine that happening because we're all so busy. So what I would challenge you to do, and what we did with our client was, hey, when you're having your one-on-one meetings with your boss, which happened every 2 weeks for her, is to not only go in and be like, hey, here are the 5 problems, what are we gonna do? That doesn't set up a very good relationship. And some of you may wanna write this down, but the key steps that we put in place that really helped her transform her relationship was, how about we start with, hey, how's it going? Pretty normal, right? And that's actually something she does with all of her peers as well as the people that she supervises. It's a 10-second interaction where you can humanize yourself. And then the second step that we did was to also share what were the things that were going well. I cannot imagine that in your workspace that only the sky is falling and you're only having problems, right? There are things that are going well, but we often forget to mention the things that are going well because it's not urgent on our mind. But it's still really important to mention those amazing things that are going on, because by doing so, your supervisor can know that you're actually getting these things done. And you're also reminding them like, hey, I'm doing a really good job here, because we're busy. And so if you don't remind them of that, they're gonna forget, or they're not gonna be aware that you're doing that good job. And then after you present those positive things and say, I think we should keep doing these things because it's working, then go into the challenges. So what you've done there is you've set up a positive association. So every time that you're going into the office, he's not gonna be like, let me duck and hide, because all you're coming to me with is problems, right? And here's the key thing when you go to your supervisor with challenges, come up with a few solutions. Maybe the solution isn't, I have the answer that's gonna fix all of this, but at least have, here are some 2 or 3 things that I think we could research, or here are some people I think we could talk to help solve this. So then what you do is you change the association that your supervisor has as you're the problem, big crisis person, to you're the person who's gonna come and share some good news that I can also then share with my supervisors as well, because I love to share how well our department's doing and how well my people's doing. And if you come to me with problems, I know that you're also being very proactive, and like you over there, you're somebody who's taking initiative, right? So you can see how your own biases about what people are thinking about you can impact your interaction with them and impact your career. Now on the flip side, what I want to then go into is, why does your personal brand matter? Anybody know who that is? Yeah, who's that? I get a lot of laughter. Does everybody know what a Game of Thrones is? Oh, it's only like half the room? I can't believe this. Unfathomable to me that you don't know. I'm a geek, I'm a nerd, and I love reading about dragons and all these other things. But just to give a high-level overview, Game of Thrones is a book fantasy series that has been turned into an HBO series, and this is one of my favorite characters, Tyrion Lannister. Tyrion is born into this very powerful Lannister family, which is fortunate and unfortunate. His father really hates him, and so does his sister. But we won't get into her in this particular story. So Tyrion, in the middle of the book series, finds himself in this really interesting position where he's been asked by his father to be the king's hand. And he has to advise the king, his nephew, on strategies and how to keep the country growing. And as many of you know who've been following the series, there's all these wars that are breaking out everywhere, right? Everybody is trying to be the king. So Tyrion finds himself in this place where King's Landing is confronted with a battle, and they are about to lose this battle to the enemy. But because Tyrion is so smart and so witty, he comes up with an ingenious plan, and with courage tries to fight to the death. And what we find is that he actually helps save the country from being taken over. So now you think, oh, well, if he's done that, of course he's gonna get all these accolades, right? No. What happens is his father, because his father has this perception that Tyrion is basically not reliable, is somebody who drinks too much, and somebody who gets under his skin, and is the cause of his wife's death, and has all these negative associations about Tyrion. What he does, in fact, is he actually takes all the power away from Tyrion, dismisses him, and to add salt to the wound, takes his lover. I know, it's very tragic, right? And this is what can happen if you're not paying attention to your brand. So we know how your own perception of your association to your brand, how others perceive you, might impact your interaction. Now, the other piece of your personal brand is how other people actually see you. And so if the person who is in charge of your career, giving you raises or promotion or giving you projects, or even if they're not, but they're supposed to help you as a colleague to get things done, if they don't have a very positive association with you, no matter how hard you work, no matter how long hours you put in, no matter how great your accomplishments, you could end up like Tyrion where you're not going to be acknowledged for that, right? And that's a tragedy because obviously somebody who is saving the country from being taken over by the enemy should really get that accolade. And we don't want that to have happen to you. But we see this time and time again. How many of you can relate to that where you're like, why is that person getting a promotion? I don't understand what they're doing. A lot of head nods. A lot of laughters here. Okay, or like, I've been here until midnight every day. Like, anybody know that I'm alive? Like, why are you still applying stuff to me, right? Lots of hands that can relate to that. And so that's the reason why, that if somebody who is in charge or who is there to collaborate with you, if they don't have a strong sense of your brand, they're also not going to be there to promote you. And so now you recognize how important it is to have a strong personal brand and to manage it, because you can see that it can impact your career. But why is there resistance to it? There's often a resistance to it because people, the most common response I get is, I don't want to be fake. How many of you have that natural aversion to like thinking about your brand and be like, I don't want to be fake? It's like some of you, okay. And what I would encourage you to do is think about Oprah's lesson, where she says, I can be a much better Oprah than I could be a pretend Barbara. And the reference is to this. When Oprah started her career as an anchor woman, the person she admired most was Barbara Walters. And what she would do would study Barbara and try to mimic her when she's on TV. And that was really exhausting. And it wasn't until there was a moment where she screwed something up and just kind of laughed and let out a sigh of relief that it hit her. And there was a moment where the light bulb went off and she said, you know what, it's much better to be me than to be a pretend Barbara. And that was when her career took off. So what I would encourage you to do in thinking about your personal brand is really not about making this where you have to be fake, or you have to kiss up, or you have to change yourself so drastically so that you don't remember who you are, because that would be really exhausting to wear a mask every day. What I am encouraging you to do is to take a look and say, hey, what is going on with my personal brand about my own assumptions? And how are other people really perceiving me? And is that something I'm happy with? And if that's not, what are some small things that I can do to make some big changes? I've worked with a lot of introverts and people who are humble and shy. How many of you relate to being an introvert, humble, or shy? Like 3/4 of the room. Okay, almost everybody in the room. And often when I talk to them about this, there's just like, I just feel like it's too much, or I just can't do it, right? Or like, I just don't want to change myself. And what I would encourage you to do is to not make this huge leap. I'm not asking you to go from this person who's more shy and reserved to being like, hey, everybody, I'm the life of the party. But to really take some small steps that can actually make a big impact in your career. And here's an example of where you can make that big difference. It's working with a client where he's really bright, he's really great at what he does, but he's not, but when you ask who he is in the company, everybody's kind of like, who's that? And it's because he's keeping himself really small and really quiet. And so some of the things that we did for him to help him change his own perception of himself, but also to help others see that his brand is something that is strong and something that's positive that should be associated with, is to make some minor changes. So for example, when he goes to the cafeteria to get water or goes to a meeting, to just actually say, hey, how's it going, to the person standing around him. It's a little awkward at first, but it's just that initial step, right? Because everybody's feeling a little awkward. And so that's one thing. So just by doing that, he was actually able to get to know people, and people knew his name. So that was an amazing feat for him. So after a month of doing that and feeling more confidence, because he's like, hey, I didn't die from that. People actually said hi back. It was amazing. What we then did was say, okay, what can we do now to up your game just a little bit more? So his interaction with people are, hey, how's it going? Good. How's it going? Good. Okay, that was good as an initial step, but it didn't really allow room for rapport. So the next thing that we added to his assignment was to say, what's one thing you can say about the work that you're doing that you can share with somebody else that you love? Because when you're positive and excited and being authentically sharing about what you love, it spreads joy to everybody. So what we added to his assignment was to come up with one thing every week that he wanted to share. So the interaction became, hey, how's it going? Good. I've been working on this feature, and I'm super excited to hear the feedback on it. The reception to that was a lot more positive, and it actually opened the space to have a longer conversation, which was, oh, what's the feature about, blah, 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 you know? And so it really allowed him to go more into what he was doing and to share that passion. And over time, by consistently doing that, people in his company were actually able to know his name and also know what he brought to the table, and more importantly, have a positive association with him because he was actually excited about the work that he was doing, as opposed to being known as the guy who, you know, never talked to anybody, who didn't care and didn't seem like he was invested in the company. Can you see the big difference that that small thing can make? I see a lot of head nods. Yes. And so that's what we're hoping that you can do today, is to find the things that are authentically true to you, you know, that you're excited about, that you're happy about, the things that you're working on that are good, and to share in a way that honors your contributions, but also uplifts everybody around you. It doesn't have to be this experience that's negative or that is fake. And by doing so, the good thing about that is that when there's an issue involving that particular project or that particular assignment, the first person they might think about calling to help solve that problem if that issue comes up is you. And so what we're doing is creating value for you, but we're also creating value for other team members, and then overall productivity for the organization. So, so now you know what a personal brand is, right? It's an immediate association that people have about you when they think of you or hear of you, similar to what we saw with Oprah. You see the positive consequences it can have in your career, like the lawyer that I was talking about, or the really negative consequences it can have in your career, like my favorite character, Tyrion Lannister. And you see that you can be authentic in your own way and still manage your personal brand. So the next question is, well, what do you want to do with that? What I find is that a lot of times people go back and say, well, I'm inspired for a day and I'm going to do something and then kind of drop off. What I would encourage you to do is to be consistent about this. So 3 things that I would recommend that you do that can make a big change is, 1, go back and do the exercise we did earlier, which is to think about the people that you're interacting with on a regular basis and ask yourself, what do you think they're thinking about you and how has that impacted your interactions with them? The second thing is to actually go out and ask a few coworkers about that. What are the 3 key adjectives that comes to mind when you think of me? What do you think are my strengths? And what would you like to see more of? This can be scary because you're being vulnerable and putting yourself out there. But this is also a moment of transformation, because without that information, it's really hard to assess where you are and whether you want to make changes. And then the last piece is this. With that information, what are you going to do about it? You're going to go home and say, you know what, it's cool, but I'm not interested in making changes. Or you can make that decision to put things in your calendar, and all it really takes is 15 minutes a week to make these changes so that you can better manage your personal brand. And I know that with change, it's always scary, even if it's good for you. And it reminds me of a story of myself when I was in college. That was a long time ago. And I was in my senior year of college. I got an interview with this tech company that at the time was really up and coming. And I was so excited. I was researching the company. I was practicing my pitch. I made a list of 10 questions so that I wouldn't be stumped at the end, right? I crossed the T's and dotted the I's, and I was like, I'm ready for this interview. So I'm jotting into the interview. And I'm like, I was super excited. So the guy says hi, and we kind of chit-chat a little talk. He goes into this spiel about his company over the next 15 minutes. He answers every single question that's on my list. And then he says, what do you want to know about us? I could not come up with anything. I was completely stumped. So the question I asked, and I'm still embarrassed about it, is it true that your company offers good free food? Take a guess at what that company was. Google, yeah. And I was mortified. It stayed with me for a while. I'm like, oh my God, they must think I'm the most awful interview ever. And it's not a great question. And it was embarrassing, and it was hard to actually share it out loud. And I share this story because I think that situation could have stayed with me and derailed me and kept me in a place where I'm like, oh, I'm never going to talk to Googlers ever again. I'm never going to do anything here again. And fast forward years later, I'm now being invited to come back and give this presentation to you and to have this honor of being able to share through my own personal trials and tribulations and through the trainings that I've got and through the experiences I've had in helping over 1,000 clients to now be able to give you these strategies. And I share that story because I can assure you, all of you have jobs at Google. So you're definitely 10 steps ahead of me, right? You at least got through the screening round, got through the callbacks, and I know the interview process here is really long. And you're way ahead of me when I started. So if I can go from that place to being where I am now, I am more than confident that with consistent work, with these strategies, that you will be able to have a really amazing, successful career. And that at this point, if you make that choice to choose to change your personal brand in a positive direction, you can definitely make that happen. So it was with great honor to be here, and I just really want to humbly thank you for spending this time together, and I'll take questions after this. Thank you.
So what about if your personal perception of yourself and other coworkers are different?
So that depends. Great question. So let's dig a little bit into that. Do you feel like your personal perception of yourself is positive or negative?
Positive.
Okay, and then do you think your coworkers' perception of you is positive, negative, or neutral?
Still positive, but just different stuff.
Okay, and so what I would say with that is, it sounds like you're in a good place because you're feeling pretty good about yourself, which is the first step, and your coworkers are feeling pretty good about you. And so if what you want to do is to have them see more of the stuff that you're feeling good about, then the recommendation would be, depending on the interactions you have with people, to discuss those things more, or to find ways in highlighting those things more. So give me a specific example, because it's harder to answer in the abstract. So what's a positive association of yourself that you want others to know about you?
Taking more initiative.
Okay. Okay, so if you want to show that you're somebody who is taking more initiative, one of the ways you can do that is if you're at a team meeting, instead of just sitting quiet, I'm not saying that's you, but for the sake of time, what I would say is that, at every meeting, you should at least make one comment if you're not making a comment, right, and asking questions. And the other thing that you can do to really show initiative is if there's something that's being assigned or things that are projects that are coming up, you would be the person who would volunteer for it. And that's showing initiative right there. The key thing then, though, is to follow up that when you're working on these projects, to let people on your team and let your supervisors know that as well.
So there is one school of thought where they say you keep doing the good work and things will fall in place. Mm-hmm. And now there's this concept of personal brand where you have to proactively influence or change the perception of other people. Do you see any conflict?
No, I don't. I don't at all. And I think that's a really great question. I think the basis is you have to do good work. If you're doing bad work and you're expecting everybody else to think good about you, that's a really hard place to be. And that would not be something that I would advocate for any client, because I'm really about having integrity, honesty, and authenticity. So you do need to do consistent good work, and some things will fall into place. So you get a job at Google. That's things falling into place, and Google is an amazing place to work. Now, if you want to elevate yourself and get to that next stage where you're going into management and leadership, there has to be some changes in your strategies. So the foundation of doing good work is still a core foundation of who you are, but that an extra step of sharing the good work that you're doing doesn't take away from that. It only adds to that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.